Welcome back. In this lecture, we're starting after we've installed Ubuntu. We've got Odoo 9 up and running. We've even installed and created a test database with some demonstration data that we can click on and make sure that everything's working like it should. So we've successfully got a working version of Odoo. One of the first things that you're going to need to understand how to do by clicking on this terminal here, and we'll be able to see all the different things that have happened. Let me click back on it again. It can be tricky to get there all the time. Is I can now stop this server from running by hitting Control-C. And so at this point, you'll see we're back at a terminal prompt here, but if I go to anywhere in Odoo, it's just going to say trying to connect. So the server's no longer running. I can click back on the terminal, hit my up arrow, and it brings me back to that ./odoo.py, and I can restart the server. So this is a very fast way for us to stop and start the server while we are developing. So now the server's running, I can go back here and use Odoo. So it's as simple as that. Control-C to stop it, server stopped. Might have to hit it twice, and then up arrow and ./odoo.py to rerun the server. So we're able now to stop and start the server, and it works the same way if you have to restart the entire Ubuntu server. All you need to do is go into this directory, the Odoo/Odoo 9, and start your server here. And for development purposes, For development purposes, this is perfectly acceptable to get started with at starting your server. So now that we've got our test database, let's go ahead and jump and log out and create a database that we're going to use. It's going to be more of a blank database for our customizing of Odoo and understanding how we can modify Odoo. Now, there's going to be a lot of reasons, and you've probably got your own right now if you're watching this video of something you want to customize in Odoo. Well, one of the common areas of customization that I've faced is a lot of times around the products, because products can vary and the customer experience can vary depending upon your business requirements. That's where you're going to see the most benefit from customization often is in making the experience better for the customers. So, for example, in our Odoo class videos, in Odoo class, we have a Odoo installation that has been customized for videos. And so we can pull up videos, see the video, and from here, once someone's logged in, they're actually able to watch videos in Odoo class. If your business is, say, for a veterinary clinic, you might need to collect the breed of the animal. You know, is it a dog? And if it's a dog, what kind of dog? Is it a dachshund? Is it a golden retriever? Those are the kinds of data that isn't in the stock version of Odoo, so you're going to want to add them. So we looked for a business requirement, an example that would be a real-life business example. And the way we're going to do that is we can go here and look at a site, and I accidentally hit that. We can hit a site called Diet Facts. And what Diet Facts is a nutritional site that has all kinds of different products. So if I click on this Oscar Mayer Deli Fresh, you'll notice that we have the name of a product up here, right? We also can have like a slogan for the product. But down here, there's a lot of extra information that's just not going to be available in a stock version of Odoo. We have how many calories are associated with this particular product. We have a serving size. We also have various nutrients like sodium and cholesterol and fat, and none of this is part of the built-in version of Odoo. So what we're going to use is this business example of how, first off, we can extend our products to collect more information, which will be a common requirement that you might face with Odoo. And then we're going to look at how we can even take these products and create menus or meals out of them so you can keep track of various dietary information. So it's going to be an example that will start out simple, but we'll be able to extend on it with more advanced Odoo development topics. So with that introduction to the business example, as we are going to expand this, let's go ahead and create a database called Diet Facts. So we create a database and we give it a name. And this time we're not going to load demonstration data. We're going to want to keep it kind of clean so that we can have the data in here that we need. So one of the things that we're going to want right away is that we know that at some point we're going to want to take sales, or we're going to manage sales through the website, but also in order to have products and something to build off of, we're going to go ahead and install sales management. So we click install and install our sales management application. So unlike the application where we had loaded demonstration data, this time we're going to have no sales orders in and no products in the system, no customers in the system. So everything's empty. And what we're really going to begin with in our next video is looking at how the framework fits together. What are models in Odoo? What are views? How does Odoo kind of fit together? So in our next video, we're going to take a look at the debug mode and start to get an idea of how Odoo fits together underneath. How does the framework fit together to provide an Odoo application? All right, so that we've got our database set up, our Diet Facts database, let's go ahead and put in one product just so that we'll have something in there that we can start basing what we're looking at around as we explore the framework of Odoo. So I just happened to pick up this Oscar Mayer deli turkey breast. I can go ahead and select this right here, and we'll just pick this as our product and paste that in, SO. And we don't have to have a cost or anything. This is more for nutrition facts. This site doesn't even keep costs in it, but if we wanted to, we could say that this is, the average cost for this product. But what we're going to be focusing on is the fact of what we don't have built into Odoo here. Mainly, what we'll look at is some of these simple things like calories. We don't have calories, and there's no place to put that, and that is yet something that might be searched on. In other words, people might want to see only the products that have under 200 calories, for example. So we're going to see how we could add that to our product model. And when I use the word model, it's important that I emphasize that that's part of the Odoo framework. Odoo keeps data in models, and everything within Odoo that you see, that whether it's a sales order or if it's a product or it's a customer, doesn't matter what it is, underlying that particular item is going to be a model. And so what we're going to do is look at the debug mode inside of Odoo to start to get a little bit better understanding of the Odoo framework. So you go up here to this little question mark and you'll find an about. So you choose about, and here is activate the developer mode. So go ahead and click activate the developer mode. Now, things run a little slower when the developer mode's active. And when I mean a little slower, it can be a lot slower. You can see this was pretty fast because it's a brand new version of Ubuntu. But one of the things that you'll see is it's added an icon up here, and this is called the debug menu. And this is one aspect that we'll be looking at as we explore Odoo. And another thing that happens when we do this is if we jump over here to settings, we're going to now have a lot more options available here under technical. Previously, you would not have gotten all these when we were not in debug mode. Now, if we get out of debug mode, we can go up here. Actually, now I think you can get out of debug. There's a glitch here. Let me try going back to another menu and see if it fixes it. It did. I can choose leave debug mode here, which will basically get rid of this. So this is, in our URL, is what's telling Odoo that we are in debug mode. But let's go ahead and click leave debug mode, because you need to know how to get in and out of it, because it does slow things down considerably when you are in debug mode. If I go to settings now, it is giving me those. Let me shift refresh and see if it gets rid of, brings them back. Yeah, okay, so another trick that I just kind of showed you there is you're going to use shift refresh a lot when you're moving in and out of technical mode or debug mode. When I did a shift refresh, you'll notice, look at how many options we lost here. All we have is users and our dashboard, which is what we see here, and we've lost our technical settings. So technical settings in debug mode are one and the same. So watch again. I go to About, I activate the developer mode, and when we come back to our settings, notice how we have all these other options available. So debug mode is important. You're going to need to use debug mode to get in underneath the hood of Odoo to really understand the framework and how things work. So now one of the other things I'll do when I'm studying Odoo's framework and I'm using debug mode is I'll a lot of times right click like on sales here and say open the link in a new tab. So now I actually have two tabs running. One where I can look at like database structure and some of the underpinnings of the framework, and another tab that I can go to actually look at the forms and the things that are inside of the applications themselves. So let's see how this works in action a little bit. If I go here to products, I want to find out what model this is. I know that it's about products, but I need a technical term. And so if I mouse over one of these items, like this product type, notice how it brings up this black box, and inside of it is a description. It says, a consumable is a product for which you don't manage stock. A service is a non-material product provided by a company or individual. So this is our basic help. But in debug mode, notice how we get so much more information. We get to see the field type. And so it's basically saying here that our object is product.template. So notice field is type. If I go down to this one, I can see that the field is default underscored code. If I go to this one, I can see that the field is barcode. And I can see that all of them, the object is product.template. This one, object product.template. This, object product.template. Now the third item, notice, is selection on this case. With product type, it's a selection that lets me pick, if I hit edit here, between these different options. So it's a selection, and it's delineated there under type. If I go to internal reference, notice how type is now CHR for character. I go to barcode, we'll also see that that's CHR for character. Let's look at sale price. We can see that the field name is actually not sale price. Instead, the field name is list underscore price. And this is important because as we start to build Odoo applications, you're going to need to reference this data by these fields and by these types. Now, if you've never programmed before, a lot of this might sound a little bit confusing to get started. So expect to watch some of these videos again so that you can understand these basics, because it's important to understand that this deli fresh turkey breast Cajun style is a product.template record. It's part of the product.template model. Right now there's only one. If I go here and look in the list view, I can see that there's one deli fresh turkey breast, Cajun style. This is of product.template. That's the type of object it is. That's the model for it. So now let's go over here to our database structures and look at models. And we can take what we learned from here. Notice how we have that object, product.template. I can go over here to our models and type that right in here, product.template. And notice it just brings up one record here, and I can see the model description is product template. And if I click it, I can see all the fields that are part of this model. And more importantly, it's not an accident that some of these things are what you would call obvious, or we've seen them before. Default code. Where did we see default code before? Well, if you remember when we were over here under internal references, if I mouse over this, the field there is default _ code. If I jump back over here again, I can look through here and here's our barcode field. And I can click on it and it brings up other properties and more advanced attributes. We don't need to get into all these right now. But the most important thing to understand is that these models right here is where all your data gets stored. It's where everything resides. And these fields are going to match fields that you see here in your forms. So if I mouse over this, what's called sale price, notice how the field name is list price and the type is float. Well, why do they call it a float? Well, a float is a type of number that is used for decimal places. So it's a lot of times used for currencies. So we have CHR for characters to store character type data, which can be a mix of characters or numbers. We have a selection type. And notice how we could pick from this selection here. And so that's a type of selection. And here you'll see that this one is a type of float. Well, if we jump over to models, we'll see, if I go down here to list price, notice we can see here float. And we can see here sale price is actually what it's called right there. So that's how it gets sale price there, shows up here. So that's the basic of models. In the next lecture, we'll take a look at how we can change some of these models and make them affect what we see in our views. All right, now that we understand that models are used to hold our data, and we've seen how we can use our debug mode to find what models are associated with what views, you can see the power in this, that right now I'm looking at this product.template data. I know that right where to go inside my model to find this field and find out more information about it. Let's just look at another couple of our models. Let's say, for example, go down here to products, and notice that we have product categories. So I'm going to click on product categories, and we can see that we have an all product categories and an all sellable. Well, we want to create a product category for our diet items. So let's go ahead and create diet items. That'll be one of our categories to hold these. But notice how if I mouse over these items, like this one, for example, that it tells me an important thing. It shows me the object is product.category. So now I know by looking at this that the model product.category is what describes product categories. And I can now look over here by going to our tree view and typing in product.category and see this model, this base object model, product category, and I can see everything in it that we need to make up a product category. So one of the things you'll notice right away, and this is important as your journey as an Odoo developer, is just because you see on this product category screen the name, there's a parent category, so I can make this part of all. So diet facts or diet items is nested under the all category. You have a category type of whether it's just view or normal, an income and an expense account. So you have these pieces of information. You got name, category, category type, income account, and expense account. But notice how when we look at it at the model level here, there's a lot of other information being collected. There's a display name. We have a created on for the create date, a created by. We have a write date and a write who wrote it. So models store information you don't always see on the screen, as well as things that it keeps in the background. In this case, you'll see this parent left and parent right. Not anything for you to worry about at this point, but as an Odoo developer moving forward, it's important to remember that when you have structures that have parent records, like in the case of product categories, where we have the diet items are now under all, and that we could then break out more in a hierarchy underneath it, that there's structure underneath that's holding that data. All of it, regardless, is always stored inside the model. So let's look at one more, unit of measure. Unit of measure is something we can use as part of our diet nutrition information. Notice how the serving sizes is 2 ounces, our 56 grams, our quarter package. You can see how there's different serving sizes here, but our unit of measure, in this case, we have measure categories, weight, our time by distance, volume. So these are different categories, but those will be useful to us when we start working with different weights for serving sizes, for example. There's no use reinventing the wheel. But what I want to show you is if we look at this and we mouse over it, that this is of the object product.uom.categ. If I go here to contracts and look at contact titles and say click on one of these, I can see that this model is res.partner.title. So the purpose of this is to give you a good understanding of how to find the models that you need to update and how they relate the data to this models list. So if I click on models here to kind of wrap this section up on models, you'll see there's 237 models in here. If I type in product, you'll see that I get a lot of models here. Each one of these are associated with different pieces of information that might be connected to a product. In this case, we can see our product category that we looked at, the categories. And there's the data for it. So we have price lists. We have our product template. And so the product template is what we're looking at right here under sales and products, where we want to collect the calories for this particular product and for other products that we're going to be putting in. We need a place to collect these calories. And we know we need to modify our product.template model to collect that information. So that's what we'll be looking at in the next video, is actually how to modify this model so that we can collect the calories for our products. Okay, so this is the video and lecture where we first make a change to the structure of Odoo. Now, this is also therefore the video where we quickly do a backup of our database and show how to do that. So we can go here to another tab and I can just open up a new tab just so that we don't lose our place in the other ones. And let's go to Web Database Manager and hit enter. Now, why am I telling you this exact URL? This is a good URL to know in case for some reason a database gets broken or you can't get back to the link from the home page that says manage databases. You want to know how to get there just by going to it. It's helpful. So there's where you go to get to the database manager. Notice that we have our diet facts database here, and I can hit backup, and it asks, you know, here's our zip, and we can just hit backup, and I can hit save file. Now, why was that so easy? Well, one of the reasons that was so easy is we don't have any security on our database at this point. This is just a developer database. We're running it inside our local user, so we're not deploying it anywhere. It's sandboxed. So we'll want to look at administration videos and lectures and server deployment and production servers as opposed to development. But you can see there that we got a backup, and I think it got it. Yeah, it's completely backed up, so it's ready to go. And so then, just to test it, we would do a restore and a browse. Just find our downloads, and there's our backup. So there's the backup of the database we just made, and we hit open. And we're going to say diet facts restore. And hit continue. And why do we do the restore? You know, we backed it up. Why did I also do a restore? Well, you do a restore, and I'm going to actually test it, because a backup is only as good as your recovery. And I'm just making sure that I'm able to get right back in, and I am, under the restore database. So that's why you do that. And before we move on to this one, let's go ahead and log out of this side of it. Notice how it thinks we're in restore. We want to make sure we're in our main database. So I'm going back to our main database. All I did there really quickly for you was show you how to back up an Odoo database and then restore it again before you make any changes. And even in a development environment, that can be important. It's even more critical in production environments. Do you always back up your databases? And even the most minor change, even if you've done it 100 times, don't think I'm not going to back up. Always back up your databases. Always test your backups to make sure that you can restore them, because all too often you might go to a database backup and go and do a restore, and for some reason you have a problem getting your database to restore. So test your backups and restore them frequently. It's just a good habit to get into. So now that we know how to back up, and we've made backups, and we've talked about how important it is to back up whenever you customize, let's make a customization to our database and start. Whoa, there we already got a problem. I'm going to shift refresh. And okay, so let me go back to that. Diet facts, admin test. And back in. Okay, that'll happen sometimes when you switch between databases in the same browser with multiple tabs open. So that's something to remember. Sometimes I'll even install a second browser, like install Chrome, for example, so you have another browser you can test with different database versions. So I don't think that was anything important, but it's important to see of what can happen. You might have to log back in, shift refresh, that kind of thing. So here's our database, and let's remember what our purpose is. We don't have a place for calories here for this item, and that's a piece of information that we have to collect for our purposes of turning these products into something that keeps track of nutrition information. So if we look at our database models, we're going to go back under settings to database models and pull up our product template. Open it up here. We want to add a field for our calories. Now, inside of this database, this might be something you would use on like an Odoo Online or an SASS. So if you're going to be using Odoo as like a software as a service where you can't build Python modules, this is like kind of your primary way of customizing Odoo. So it's important, to know kind of how to do this. The other purpose of going this route is so that you can understand at a more high level how Odoo models work, how you can modify Odoo without having to get into writing applications right from the beginning. And once you understand how models fit with the views and how the views fit with the actions through Odoo's framework, and you understand the framework better, then it's going to make a lot more sense and you're going to understand the Odoo applications that you build. So in this case, we're going to add calories. So we hit edit to modify our product template. And remember, we know this is the model we want to modify because we found it by looking right here, that we know from these what model, in this case product.template, we need to change. So let's add an item, and you'll notice that here under field name it has X underscore. The reason we have an X underscore is that tells Odoo that this is a custom field, and so they will never name a field inside of their system anything with an X underscore, and they will always preserve any fields in models that start with X underscore. So it's a way of preserving your fields that you customize within the Odoo framework. It basically tells the Odoo framework, this is a custom field, don't mess with it. So let's go ahead and say X underscore calories, and we'll call for the label calories. And you'll notice under field type there's a lot of choices here. We'll be covering quite a few of them in this course. The ones that we've seen already have been the character field, like for barcode and for name and for the internal reference that we saw. So this is a common field type. We've also seen float. Float was used for the sale price. And we saw selection, which was used for the type of product, whether it was a consumable or a service. We're going to actually use integer because we never really have half a calorie. So let's go ahead and use integer for calories, since calories are usually in integers. Something might have 1 calorie or 2 calories. We don't talk about half a calorie. So we'll use that as an opportunity to have a field type of an integer. And under this copied, let's just look at a few of these things. The required will tell Odoo whether or not this is a required field in order to save the record. So if this isn't checked, that means that someone has to enter a value for calories. They won't be able to leave it blank. We're going to go ahead and not say it's required for now because we're expecting to have other products inside of this that may not be diet related. Maybe it's a book on diet information, for example, so it might not have calories. Read only means that it wouldn't be able to be changed by the user, obviously. And indexed is, they're not going to tell us what it is there, but basically what indexed means is that it's going to be sortable, and it would be something that we could look it up on. And I don't believe in this case we have to have it indexed because it's not a field that's connected to any other models. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. And you'll notice at the very bottom now, we'll have an X underscore calories as part of our model. And we can hit save now. And Odoo's framework takes care of all of the underneath required programming to go into our Postgres database and update that model, which is a table inside of the Postgres database. But we don't have to worry about that. Odoo's taking care of adding everything into the Postgres database and letting Odoo now know that this field's available to us. So if we go back over here, the one thing to remember is there's no way for this field or this form to know to add that field to our form. In other words, it's part of our model, but this is what's known as a view. So this is an opportunity to demonstrate. In the next lecture, we'll see how we can take that field that we've just added to the model and add that field now to our view inside of our product template. So fortunately, the debug mode makes it real easy for us to add a field to a view. So we've looked at what the model is, and the model holds the data itself, but there has to be a way to show the data, and you might look at the data this way. For example, we're seeing now the cost and the volume and the gross weight in what we call a tree view, or you might look at it in the form view. And so different views can sit on top of a single model. In fact, the product.template model has many views that Odoo uses to show information about products. And so what we want to do is we want to modify this particular view so we can specify the calories for our product. And we might just want to drop it in here and right now make it so we can start collecting that data, and we're going to see how easy that is. First thing we have to do is we have to make sure we're in debug mode, and in this tab we just don't happen to be in debug mode. So let's jump into debug mode. And now that we're in debug mode, we can go up here and you'll notice there's all these options under our debug menu. So you just click this to pop your debug menu, and under here there's an edit form view. It's just sitting right there. So we hit edit form view, and I'm just going to click down in this part down here, and we're going to see what might look like really confusing to you if you've never seen XML before and you're very new to programming. So this is like one of those areas where up till now, it's basically been filling in boxes. We haven't done any programming or anything like programming. We're just looking at the framework. This is going to be the first time you really are kind of doing something that's like programming. So don't panic. Just know that you're looking at the view for this product form, and you're looking at basically an XML type document. And the things to look for as we scroll down is don't let it intimidate you, but notice how right here we have barcode. Okay, so it's not that far down. We can see that we have, maybe was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This happens to be the 8th line down. It might be a little different in your version if Odoo is changed a little something in the build. But you'll notice that we have a field name barcode. And what you can know about that is, I'll go ahead and close this now, is that's exactly referencing this barcode field you see here. And the internal reference, you'll notice if I mouse over it, says default code. Now let's look at our form view again. Notice we have default code, and then we have barcode right under it. Now, fortunately for us, this makes it really easy for us to add in our calories, because we can just add it right into this form right here. Now, this isn't a best practice for production environments. This isn't a best practice if you're a developer and you've been and you're writing a module. You don't need to use the debug mode, and you do not need to edit your views inside of this. But this is a great way for you to understand the framework for Odoo, and that's what we're building. We're building a foundation for you to understand how Odoo's framework works. What happens is that right here you can notice object is product.template. So Odoo's smart enough to know as soon as it sees object product.template that every field that you've placed down in here is coming from that model. It really is as simple as that. I can jump in here and hit enter, and we'll just space over, just hitting your space bar. And we're going to type our first line here that's going to let us put the calories into our form. I'm going to use an open less than sign. It's like usually it's the shift comma, so it's on the comma key. Do a shift comma, and that's like a less than sign. And so then you type field name equals, and so this tells basically the Odoo interpreter, the Odoo engine that's processing this, to, hey, I want to show a field name. Well, what field name do I want to show? I want to show the one I just added, X calories. And now I can end this off just like that. So this is kind of like the ending symbol that goes with the ending bracket. And you'll see other examples of that, like right here, it uses it again. So how we have field string variance, it has a name, and then it goes to right there. And that ends it off. Notice how here there is no ending slash, and instead this field gets ended off here. So it's going to be a little confusing at first. We'll have other examples, but this is all you have to type. So everything else stays the same. You're just going to put in this code right here in order for it to put that calories field there. And when I hit save, it's checking to make sure that field is in there. How do I know? Watch this. If I go in here, edit, and I put some garbage and hit save, it says invalid view definition, field X calories DFD does not exist. So you're getting to see here how Odoo is validating this XML for you. So if the field's not right, it'll let you know. But we do have an X_calories field because we added it to our module, or to our model. So I hit save and close that. Now, notice we don't see our change yet. We have to click on products, click back here again, and now notice we got calories here. It's 0, but we can go right over here and see that that's actually 60 calories. So we edit, put in a 60. Now we have 60 calories saved for our product there. If I go ahead and let's pick another product. Let's go to Steak and Shake Steak Burger Skillet. Steak Burger single skillet. Create product. Jump back over. We got 1,370 calories. Okay, so that's some calories. All right, but let's put them in. 1,370. Save. And now you'll notice if we go back to our first one, we have our 60 calories. Go here, we got our 1,370. So we can see how we quickly were able to add this to our form view. And now we can edit it and save it. So we added the model, we got it on our view, we can edit it, we can save it. So even though that's just a little bit of time it took to learn how to do that, just imagine of all the forms and all the processes in different places of Odoo where you need to customize something, and you just need a little piece of extra information, just something that'll help your users or your customers or your vendors with that extra piece of information. It's about your business requirements. Now you know how to add that to basically any form in Odoo just by using debug mode to find what object or model you need to add the field to, then going into your, after adding that field, going into your edit form view and placing your field right on your form. So it's simple, but very powerful. So in our next video, we're going to explore a little bit more about how you can edit views, and we're going to do a little bit of an exercise, a little bit of a challenge for you. So in the next, this next video, I alluded to the fact that we're going to have a little bit of an exercise, a little bit of a challenge in this lecture. And so we added this calories field to the model, and we added it to the form. So now I'm going to challenge you to try and add this field to the tree view. In other words, if I click on this tree view, we want to see the calories out here as well. So notice how we have our cost, our volume, gross rate, internal categories, product type. We want to add calories to the tree view the same way that it was added to the form view, and it's much of the process is the same. So I'm going to challenge you to pause the video now and attempt on your own to see if you can add that field, that calories field, to your tree view. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and tried at least to add the field to the tree view. If you didn't and you weren't successful, don't get discouraged. It's still new, and that's why we're gonna do this several times so it gets reinforced. And I'm gonna show you how to do it now. So one way to do this is, notice that we're already on the tree view. If I go up here under our debug mode, we have an edit tree view. And if I hit edit tree view, we're down here under our architecture, just like for our form, we're going to see what makes up our tree view, the different columns. So one way, I like to use copy and paste a lot. So I'm going to actually just select this. I'm going to hit Control C to make a copy. Hit enter to get another line and space over, and then I hit Control V to paste, and now I can put X calories in there just like that and hit save. And this works because you'll notice up here, object product.template, so it's pulling that field that we added to our model. We're getting to reuse it. We only had to add it once to the model. Now we can use it in different views. And if I click products and click on our tree view, notice there's our calories. And you'll also notice that it's automatically sortable because it's actually stored in the database. So there's also a way to make it so that this particular calories can be summed up at the bottom and totaled at the bottom of your tree view inside of a tree view. So why don't we see how to do that? So right now you'll notice that under calories there's no total. Now you might not need this really for different products, but if you searched for them and you wanted to see them, I'm just going to show you how you can total this up real quick. So you can see how there's a few other little things you can change on the tree view. So if I change this, edit this tree view, and I go here to calories, I can say sum equals total calories. And this is basically an attribute. This is called an attribute for our field name that's going to tell Odoo that I want to sum this up and have a total column called total calories. And if I shift refresh, I'm holding down my shift key and telling it to reload. You'll see that now we have a total for our calories inside of our product list. This will be more useful once we add additional things to our application when we're summing up like total calories in a meal and things like this. But what you've learned here is a couple of things. You've learned how to first of all add to a form, and it's important to realize that the order matters. So if I wanted the calories above this internal reference, I can go up here, I can edit the form view, And it does make you hit enter. It doesn't give you a lot of space here, but you can make it work. And I can cut this from here and paste it above our default code, for example. And so now when I save this back and I shift refresh, I can use that shift refresh again. Calories will now be above our internal references. So you're seeing how to get the control and where you position things matters. It's also important to realize that these form views and looking at them through this way is a way for you to get good insight into the Odoo framework. So you might be wondering, hey, how do I do this in my application? I want to do this certain thing. Well, one of the best ways you can learn how to do that is first find somewhere else in Odoo where that's already being done. And so just to take another little visit at the edit form view and hit enter down here, you'll notice things that start to stick out. Like, for example, field name equals type, position equals after. So let's ask ourselves what this means. Again, I'm assuming that that people that are using this video may have not programmed before, may not understand XML. So we're going a little bit slower here and explaining what every little bit of this is. But what this is basically saying is it's looking for a field named type, and that it wants to position after that these fields. So let's see what that looks like when we go back to our view here. Notice how this says product type, and if I mouse over it, notice under field, right there at the top, it says type. So literally what is happening in this form view is it already knows that product type is available on this form. It's already there from a form that it's inheriting from. And that's another concept we'll work on, but you'll notice here, inherited view, that we have another view here. So this is taking a common template, a common product template, this particular view, and it's extending it with everything you see here. And in order for it to decide where to put these things, notice how it's positioned them after type. If I wanted them before this, I can actually come in here and say before, hit save. And again, as part of this kind of exercise, I want you kind of imagine, what do you expect to happen by this change? So, pause the video for a second. If you have to think about it a little bit, I'll bring it back up. Look what I've changed this from being type position after to type position before. So this is the way it looks before I made that change. And now let's see what it looks like afterwards. Notice how product type is now down here. Calories has magically popped to the top. Why did it do that? Well, it did that because I told the Odoo framework that I don't want it to position X calories after my type field. I want it positioned before the type field, but not just that one. All of these are going to be that way. So you get a lot of control here. And just so you can understand completely how this works, I'm going to end off the field here and make another for after. So what this means is that we'll have the calories at the top, then after the type, we'll have our default code and our barcode. I save it, shift refresh, and it'll be just like I described. We're going to have calories at the top, then our product type, then our internal reference and barcode. So we learned here in this form view not only how we can add fields that we've added to our models, we've also seen how we can reposition them and using this syntax of finding a field. First, this is like finding it, then saying we want to position either after or before it certain things. Now, here's an interesting one. We can actually get rid of the product type. You say, no way. Yeah, way. Is it? Maybe we can't. We're not going to go there because it's a required field. But we can suppress fields the same way by using the replace instead of before and after. But we'll talk about that later. So I think that's a good place to wrap this video up. We've learned how to add a field to a tree view, but we also learned how to go back into our form view and reposition the fields in the orders that we want them in, and use the position attribute to decide whether we want to position our new fields before or after a given field on a form. Okay, in this video, we're going to start to expand on our knowledge of how forms and views that you see, like our tree view, and in this case, our Kanban view, in these different views and the models, how they tie together through menus and actions. Because if you'll notice, when I click on products, I go to this Kanban view. If I click on sales orders, for example, it brings up another type of view. So these actions, products, for example, when I click on it, trigger these views. And they also, as you can see, if I click products here, notice how we have this filter, can be sold. And you'll notice that when I click on sales orders, there's no filter here. And products, we have this can be sold filter. So you might ask yourself, well, how does this happen? What's the relationships between menus and then the views and the products you see? And fortunately, the debug lets us quickly get some insight into how Odoo's framework works. So let's open up this debug menu and look at this edit action. Now, notice how it says, click to define a new product. You must define a new product for everything you sell. This information here. Let's real quickly go here to sales orders, and you'll see that same information here, like create a quotation, the first step of a new sale. If I go here to edit action, notice how here's our help. So if I said create a quotation and I put exclamation points here and hit save, if I go back and shift refresh, we're going to get our exclamation points now there in our help. So you can see the direct connection here between our actions and what you see inside of this particular view. And it's no different when we click on products. If I click on products and we look at this edit action, think of the actions as the glue that holds the models to the views. They tell how the view should behave, which view should get launched, and how it should act upon that model. Okay, so notice like right away here that there's this view reference, and we can see here it's product, template, product, Kanban. So this view reference, as well as this view mode starting with Kanban, is why when we click on products, we see this Kanban view, and when we click on sales order, we instead go to a tree view, a list view instead. And I can go here under edit action and see that its search view is sales order list select instead of Kanban. And notice here that the tree view is first in this action. So again, we're examining the actions of these products so we can see a little bit how they work together. So another thing, let's just so that we can see how we can change these actions, let's see how we could get the tree view to be the default. So, a lot of people, and this is a common request I'll get, is they'll say, I want to see the tree view. I don't need to see the Kanban view. If this Kanban view takes up too much space, I always want to see the tree view. So how can we change this action to do that? First, we can go up here and edit the action. And the first thing we got to remember is that our view reference is the product Kanban, which we probably don't want. So let's try to take that off, and you'll notice that there's the 3 different views. So Odoo's pretty good about naming things. So they named it product, template, dot product, and then for each of the views, there's a different one. So let's pick tree as the view we want to reference when this action is called. And then we also want to come here and put tree view first here, and then Kanban form, so there's no confusion. Let's hit save. Now watch what happens when we go to sales order. We get the list view. When we go to products, notice now we get the list view. So just like that, it's a small little thing to learn, but you're learning how to change actions so that they can work the way your users might want them to work instead. So, as you can see, we were able to, just by editing that action, change which view is the default. Now, we can still click and go to the Kanban. It's not broken, it's still there. It's just changed the order of them, so it defaults to our list view instead. All right, so we continue to explore the Odoo framework using the debug mode, and we're going to take a look now at how the menus themselves hook up to these actions. So notice how if I click products, we see the tree view. If I hit sales orders, we see these. These are triggered by these are triggering actions. So this is the action right here that gets triggered. And so there's nothing here that'll let you see this from the menu. So we need to look at that from this side of it, from the technical side. So under our database structures, we've already looked at how the models work. And we've also learned how to get to views from within the debug mode. You can also get to views with it in the user interface here. So let's just quickly look at the views and notice how if I type in product that I get a list of these views. And so, for example, this product.product tree, I can click on it and see the view here that is associated, with that particular view. So this is the architecture of the view, what we expect to see, and this is the view name itself. So you can take, for example, if I go here and I edit this tree view, you're going to see this external ID right here. This product template tree view is going to be found in here. It's going to be one of these views. And I should be able to just copy and paste it out. So let's try that. Copy, go to here, and just paste it. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Paste that view in here. Ah, shoot. It didn't get my copy. So copy. And paste. There it is. Okay, so it isn't quite finding it, so we have to use some other, we'll just try that much of it. Yeah. So it didn't find it because it's probably not searching right on this key, but it did find it once I took off the product dot in front of it. So something to keep in mind. You might not be able to paste exactly, but now this is that tree. And you'll notice there's our X calories and our sum total calories that we added. So you can look them up here. Every once in a while, you might get a tree or a view, any view, where it gets corrupted, and you can't, because you can't view it, then because you can't view it, you can't click the edit form view within that form to view it. If that happens to you, you can look the view up here and make the change here. So if I had to, if for some reason this was erroring and was not letting me edit this view within side of the product itself, I could come here to this view list and edit it here and get the same result. So that just shows you that there's nothing hidden from you. You can use this debug mode to really see how all this fits together and how these views tie to the models, and then now how they tie to the actions. So let's look at the actions here. If I click on actions and I type in product, you're going to see the products. So there's more than one right here. We have 2 of them listed, and that's because we'll have a products under invoicing as well as under sales. But let's go ahead and click on this one here, and you'll notice that they're both just named products. So you can't get a lot from the actions here. This is just the name, and you'll notice that here we have action bindings. So let's look at these and do a product. And so these are other types of actions that you might have to look at. But what we really want to do is see, how do these actions get called? So if I go here to menu items and I type in products, because this is where we really see it, you'll notice that under sales we have products. And how does we know that that's finding it, because if we find sales here, we also find sales here, and then we have products. So we know, because of the hierarchy, that this is the main sales menu, this is the sub menu, and then this is the final, products underneath it, that this is the right menu that we're wanting to look at, that's tied to our action. And now notice here under action we have a reference that we can click. So let's go ahead and click that, and now this is the actual action that you can see. There's our tree Kanban that we changed. Remember, it used to be Kanban tree. We changed it from tree to tree Kanban, and we picked this as the tree. And then there's our context here that has our default filter to sell, so that to sell these items. That's what puts that inside of the list here. This can be sold. That's what this context really does. So this is how, when you see this menu that's created right here, it triggers this action. This action then says, okay, this is the object that it's for, and here's the views we want. We want a tree, a Kanban, and a form, and we default ours to the tree. So that's really all there is to it. And if you're new to frameworks in general, you've never programmed before, this is going to be a little bit overwhelming if it's really new to you and you're a beginner. But don't hesitate to go back and what we're going to and look through some of these other earlier lectures for the parts that are maybe a little bit confusing. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take some of what we've learned, and we're going to build on it, and you're going to see how to, first of all, add a little bit more to a model. You're going to see how we can create our own action and then create our own view for that action, all within this debug mode, so you can really understand the really important connections between our models and our views and our actions, which in the programming world, they'll sometimes call them controllers. So we're really looking at what is sometimes called a model view controller type design. And this now is kind of completed that foundation framework of you understanding that this menu, when you click on it here, is calling this action, which then tells what models and what views need to be displayed. And you've learned how to change some of these things and change and add fields to these views. So let's pause this lecture. We're gonna wrap this one up, and in our next lecture, we're gonna see how to add a field to a model. We're gonna also then see how we can create our own menu and restrict based upon some of these things in our search views, and create our own search views. So in the next lecture, we'll just be expanding and continuing to move ahead with our Odoo development. All right, in this lecture, we're going to learn how to create our own menus and then use the concept of domain to let us limit what actual items we show under that menu. And it's going to help you understand a little bit more about menus, more about actions, and how we can use what's in the model to filter data within Odoo. So to get started, we're going to look a little bit at just how we can do a filter and customize filters in Odoo. So if I go back here to our products, you'll notice that we have here in our list view, we have, if I expand this out, filters for product services, and we have this can be sold filter. Notice how I can check it or uncheck it to determine whether this shows up or not. And we can add our own filters in to make more useful for our users. And so what might be a filter that we could use would be, let's use the example of like a low calorie item. So notice how, we have, this is 60 calories, this is 1370 calories. For our example, let's suppose that we want items that are low calorie. So right now, one of the ways we could do this is hit add custom filter. We're going to go here and say that we want calories to be less than, say, 100. And we'll apply that. And now notice that our calories less than 100 filter has been applied, and the other item dropped off the list. And if I close this, then our filter goes away until I pop it back up here again. Now, one of the things I can do is I can say save the current search as low calorie. So I'm showing you how this is done just using like the built-in methods of Odoo. No programming required. We haven't customized anything. But there is some customization we can do from this, and we'll see how this kind of works. If I go up here under Manage Filters, notice how I now have a filter called Low Calorie, and it's tied to this model. It knows that I'm the user. It knows which action it's tied to, and then it also has this domain here where it's saving the actual contents of the filter. And if I click on it, I can see more about it. So it's actually created this for us, this filter. So let's see how we could add this though, so that it's not part of the user's experience, but more of a programming experience. How would a developer create a search view? And if we go, I'm going to copy this so I have it in my clipboard for this domain of calories being less than 100. And let's go back to our products list, and notice how it defaults just back to this. And I have this low calorie search, but I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to actually delete it and get it out of here. So now there's nothing about low calorie anywhere in here. It's basically been wiped out. But what I can do is, let's take a little look at the search view. And what the search view is, this is the templates that let you see what's currently under that search view. So let me hit enter here and get down. And so you'll notice that one of these down here is this can be sold, filter to sell, right? And whether the sale's okay. So this is the one that we see defaulting every time we click on products. So let's go ahead and add our own new filter for low calorie. So I can come down here and let's paste in our domain that I have for calories that I kind of saved. And now I'm going to use my copy and paste for this filter string, because you know, one thing about programming is there's a lot of syntax, and remembering it is hard. The way that this is almost a non-programming course is I'm not going to be asking you really to write code as much as I'm going to ask you to copy code and then change it. So we're going to take this filter string that's for sale okay. I'm just going to copy this whole string, copy it, and then I'm going to come down here and paste it. And we're going to change it to what we want. The string, we want to say low calorie. The name here, instead of filter to sell, we'll just call it filter low calorie. So we're just giving it a different name. And now our domain, we can copy and paste this, I would think, but it might be just as easy to change it here. I don't know. Let's go ahead and try copy and pasting it and see how it likes it. So I'm going to copy that whole domain into there like that. We'll see how it likes that and save it. Okay, it doesn't like that, I don't think. Oh, one of the things is that for this, okay, I don't think it likes this at all. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this domain like that, and we'll just retype it like it should be. So it's going to be X calories. Now, one of the things to remember is, and this is just with how it is with less than signs. Because they look like this, we can't use them the same way. We have to actually use an ampersand, LT, and a semicolon. And that's less than. And then for this, we'll have 100. So I wish the font was a little bigger here. But you'll see that if I save this now, it does save. And this is just like a less than sign. The ampersand is just a character, so it knows that we're talking about having, a escaped character, they call it. LT for less than, and then a semicolon. So calories less than 100 here. And I've already saved it. And I'll hit products. I'll probably have to do a shift refresh. And if I go up here now under filters, notice how there's a low calorie, and I can select it. And if I make sure that it's just low calorie, it'll now filter. So low calorie drops it off because it's that. If you put them together, this is just something to remember. If I say low calorie and can be sold, by putting them together like that, it's an R. So probably this needs to be in its own. So how do I do that? In other words, I don't want it grouped together with can be sold, because if I say can be sold and I choose low calorie, notice how it keeps them both because it's R. This is an R condition. Either of these can be true. So if I uncheck that, of course, now I just get the low calorie. But that means that this really needs to be in its own group. And how can I do that? It's really simple. You just have to go back into the search view. And again, 90% of learning Odoo's framework is going to be looking at what you can see other things, how other things are done, and then you just do it the same way they do it. And you'll notice how we have this separator here. I can just copy it and drop it in here between our can be sold and our low calorie. So low calorie is by itself. It'll always be, if you choose low calorie, it's going to stand on its own. Let's see if it automatically reloads these. Yeah, it did. So now if I choose low calorie, notice how it's an and. They have to be both can be sold and they have to be low calorie. Now it's just low calorie. Now it's not low calorie, not applied. So now that filter is built into our actual application. It's part of it. And so the users still have their own favorites and everything, but now we have a low calorie filter. So now in our next video, we're going to look at how we can create a special menu item over here just for our low calorie products, along with, if we so chose, its own action, and we will have its own action, and to have an automatic low calorie filter applied that's at what we call the domain level, rather than a filter here that can be unchecked. So that'll be in our next lecture. All right, at this point, we're really getting near the end of what we're really hoping to accomplish inside of the Odoo debug mode, at understanding first the models, how the views fit together, the actions and the menus. But this is going to be our opportunity to actually go in and create a menu, assign the action to it, and then be able to determine the results of the filter based upon that action. So what we're going to do for our example is we have our products here, but what we want to do is create a simple menu for the low calorie products. And this is a common action. It might not be in your business requirement, obviously anything close to that, but you might want to have a segmented section for certain types of categories, or for certain ways that you want your menus to tie into different models. And it's just a good way for you to finally, here at the end of this kind of major section of looking at the Odoo framework, to really understand how menus tie to actions and then to views. So let's begin by first creating the menu that's going to hold our actions. So the menu we want to create, we'll go here under our user interface to menus, and we'll go to products. Because what we want to do is we want to find a menu that already is close to that. This is what's going to kind of help us get our menu without having to create it from scratch. So I go here to products, and you'll notice here that we got a parent menu of sales. So we still want it to be under sales, and we still want it to be, in the same path. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to duplicate this menu, and we're going to call this menu low calorie products, like that. And we're going to go ahead and leave the parent menu the same, and we're just going to increment the sequence number. Now notice over here that it has a place for us to select an action, and it's got this products action. But what we're going to do is just use the same action for now. So I hit save, and notice how our full path got changed. And we now have a menu, and there's our parent menu. And we have a sequence that tells us, of course, what order it's in. So now let's go ahead back here to sales, and we'll do a shift refresh to tell Odoo to reload the menu. And just as simple as that, we're going to have a low calories products that I can click on, and it basically just does the same thing as the products, which, that's not unexpected. We just created the menu, and we tied it to the same action. So we don't have a different action. We're still using the same action for our low-calorie products. But that's what we're going to change now. And I'm kind of teaching you incremental development. In other words, I first tested out our new menu. Did our new menu get added? Okay, it's working. Now we're going to change the action. So let's hit edit. And you'll notice that I can specify a new action here, but instead, before doing that, let's pull this one up. Because just like with the menus, I don't see a reason to necessarily create a new action when I can copy this action. Because it's already got our object in here. It's already got a view reference. It's already got a context filter we can work with. So let's go ahead and under actions here, open up our actions, window actions. And this one is the one I know that we want because I can see the tree. I can see that we switch these around. I can see the default filter. So there's two of them named products, but this one I can see isn't the one we want because it starts with a Kanban and it's got a different context on it. But this is the one we want to make a copy of. So let's duplicate this one. And we're going to call this low calorie product. So we're making it so that the action is defined specifically so we can understand it relative to our menu. If we save it right now, it'll basically, still perform like the other filter. But what we want to do is come down here and we can remember that we created that filter called low calorie. And Odoo's framework picks up on this search _default _filter, and then we'll search for any filters that we have that'll match. And that :1, that means set that filter. So let's jump back here to products and let's shift refresh. And now watch what happens when we click on our low calorie products. Notice our low calorie filter is automatically set and our model has corresponded to only showing us those records. So you can start to see here that we were quickly able to add this menu in, and then we were able to assign a filter to it to limit what we see here. So this is a good opportunity to do a recap of the Odoo framework from within this debug perspective. If we look at our settings, remember that we found that under database structures, we have our models. And the models are where all of the data is stored. One of the models I do want to talk about a little bit that we don't really have addressed right now in our application is the res.partner model. So if I type in res.partner, res.partner is the main model that is used for all the users in the system, for all the customers in the system, and all of the vendors in the system. And if I click on this, you'll see here that we have, for example, the birth date of the partner. We have the city. We have company ID. We have the country ID, the create dates, their credit limit. And you can see that this is a very long list. And this is just page 1. If I go here, well, actually, that was for that particular partner, this particular record. But as you can see, there's a lot of fields in the partner table. And so if someone's a company, this is company gets checked. There's going to be also one that if you install purchasing, that would be for vendors. You can see here, customer is a customer. So every customer can also be a supplier or a vendor, or they can be a company. So this res.partner model is the foundation for anything that you would ever work with customers or with vendors or suppliers. You will find this data, this model being used a lot. Product.template, obviously, for product. Another real common one is sale.order. So we'll look at this model, sale.order. So if you want to look at what goes into a sales order, you got your sale order header here and your sales order line. If I click on this, you'll notice that one of the items that we'll have that ties all this together is this partner ID. Notice that it says here is a customer, and it's a many to one. So this is another aspect of understanding relationships in Odoo of these models, is that the way the sales order gets tied to a particular customer is through this partner ID. And that partner ID is not named by accident. That's associated directly with the res partner table. So if I click this field, notice that this field name is called partner ID, and this is inside of our sales order header, but notice that it's related to res.partner. So this is what ties the customer, the partner ID, to the sales order. And if we go here to sales and we're in debug mode and I click on a sales order, I'll create a header here just for the heck of it. If I mouse over it, notice there, right there is our relationship. I can see right at the top, field partner ID. I can see the object is sale.order that we're working in. So this is our sales order header. And there's our type, many to one. There can be many different customers, but only one of them can be assigned to this sales order, is the way to think of that, this single customer. So I could pick, and there is no customer here because no one's designated as a customer yet. We don't have a customer in here. But as you can see, this is how it ties together. At the very, very bottom of that black box, you'll see relation res.partner. That tells us right there that this field partner underscore ID is tied to the relationship res.partner. The underscore ID, that is a requirement. So if you're linking tables, and we'll look at a few more of them here in our models, and understanding these models, let's go back to sale order, that you'll notice that to tie to the company, we have underscore ID, and it's a many to one. Currency underscore ID, many to one. Now, there's other things that are many to minis, and we'll look more at that later, and it's not so important, but you'll notice that here on the project underscore ID, many to one. So this underscore ID is a common syntax for saying that it's going to tie to another table, who the salesperson is for the sales order right here, underscore ID, salesperson. And we know, guess what? This user ID is going to tie to res.users. Res.users is another object. And just so you know, as we get more involved with these advanced models, if I go to res.users, we bring it up here, we can see that it's going to have a tie somewhere in here to the partner, the related partner. So even the users in the system are tied to a partner table, res.partner, partner related data of the user. So users are tied to partner IDs. There you can see our passwords, encrypted passwords, the phone number. So this is the user, res.users, but res.users also has a lot of other things tied to it. As you can see, anything that has a dash ID or is a many to one, that means there's another table tied to it. In this case, like contacts that might be applied to someone is a one to many, meaning that for one user, they could have many contacts. So that, I think, is a good overview of the models and how they really play the important role inside of Odoo of storing the data. We go down here to our user interface and look at views. Views are the same way. If I go to sale and we look at the different sales orders, like sale order form, and I click on this, I can now see all of the content that makes up that sale order form. Now, these views are stored typically in XML files inside of applications, and we'll see in the upcoming videos how we can look at this from the code side of things. But it's important that you understand that these views sit on top of models, and that right here at the very top I can see sale.order, and therefore these fields that we see inside of here are going to refer to that model, partner underscore invoice ID, partner underscore shipping ID, the date underscore order, the price list, the currency ID. All of these are the fields that we just saw inside of the models. So the views, you have tree views, you have Kanban views, you have form views, but they're still all stored the same way, and you can still reference them inside this debug mode, and it's a good way for you to get familiar with Odoo and the framework. And then finally, the actions. Now the ones that we are looking a lot at are the Windows actions, things that when you click on a menu happen. So if I go here and I type in sale, we can go and see that sales orders has its own action, and we can see the model here. So let's click on this one, and notice that the sales orders action has a domain value over here. And again, if you're not a programmer, don't worry about the syntax so much. Copy and paste it. Use examples and change them. Don't attempt to try to memorize the syntax. It's too complicated. It's better to copy and paste it, but I still want you to read through it and try to understand what this means. And this is a chance to understand a little bit more complexity than the other filters. Like we had X calories less than 100. In this case, we're looking at a value called state. And the state is a common attribute here for items in Odoo. So if I go to a sales order, and I create one up here, is they're going to have states up here of what, and I can actually hold my mouse over it, and you'll see it says right there field state, and we have a draft, we have a sent, we have a sale, a done, and a cancel. See, they're under selection. Those are what that field can take on in terms of a selection, and you'll notice it says the field is state. Now, if we jump back over to our action, notice that this domain value says that state is not in draft, sent, or canceled. So what this means is when you click on a sales order and you go up here under sales, I'll do it here, and you click sales orders, it's applying underneath in this action. I'm going to bring it up right here so you can see we're looking at the same thing, that the state is not in draft, it's not in sent, and it's not in cancel. So this domain value is what keeps quotations from showing up here. And if I go to quotations and I look at the action, you'll notice it's the opposite. The state is in draft, sent, or canceled, where the sales order action, it was not in draft, center, canceled. So again, understanding a little bit more about actions. You can see there's some other things here too, like the limit of how many records that are going to get shown, what view reference, and then also you can even specify a search view reference. So it gives you a lot of control that if you have different views of searches that you might want for different users or different menu items, you can get a lot of control here, and I encourage you to use what you've learned in these past lectures in this section about how to use the debug mode to learn about the models, learn how the actions fit together, and then finally, just to finish our review, that you've seen the actions. How do they get set up with the menus? You just come down here to user interface, you look at your menu items, you can actually type in the name of the menu that you might want to look at, and in this case you can see anything to do with sales. We had the low calorie menu that we made, so I could type in low, and there's our low calorie products. But if you click on a menu, you can see which action, and this is really all menus are, is they're a parent, they got to tie to a parent somewhere, and you just hook them in, and then they have to fire off an action when you choose them. And you know, as we've seen, actions, when we click on it, allow us to define what model we're working with. It allows us to set up filters and contexts. We saw just a minute ago of how you can also use domains to limit what shows up because of an action. So I think with that said, we've learned a lot about Odoo's framework, especially the critical parts about the models, views and the controllers, or what we call actions, to decide how those views should get shown and when those views should get shown using the menu. So next is the fun part, is where we take what we've learned about the Odoo framework and we start building our very first Odoo module from scratch that will let us do some of these same things that we've been doing through the interface. We're going to learn how to do them in code and then build on that to build more advanced Odoo applications. So we're really just getting started. This is a foundation that hopefully, if you have confusion about actions, how they relate to views, and how they relate to models, this is where you want to get started before we actually start writing a lot of programming. So we look forward to seeing you in the next section.